Amazing. Welcome back, everyone. It has been a hell of a week so far. I think we've had quite the characters of guests here on Monday and Tuesday. We're going to bring it back to reality tonight with one of our favorites, one of your favorites, because ever since the first time he made an appearance here, you guys have been demanding that we bring him back, and so he has kindly and graciously accepted to come back once again. So, Isaac Arthur, it is good to have you back here, sir.
Thanks, Kyle.
And Steve, you're here too.
Yeah, glad to be back. Yeah, I'm ready for a little kind of like straightforward, just nice, learned conversation today.
Yeah, no amazing.
No train wrecks, please. Yeah.
I'm
happy to be a beta male today. I'm good with that.
Isaac, are you familiar with Jesse Lee Peterson's work?
I can't say as I am. The name's familiar.
Oh man,
you lucky dog.
Oh man. Okay,
so
yeah, I'll send you a link. I'll send you a link.
Don't corrupt him.
You have to check him out.
Is that a good old man or a bad old man?
Oh, it's a probably the imagine a. How would you describe it, Steve? I don't even know what you would say. One of those
things that once heard, you can't unhear kind of things.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. But yes, welcome to you guys as well. Thank you for being here and for sticking with us. We have the week will continue to get bigger because on Tuesday, Lawrence Krauss, the famed physicist, will be with us with Bill Ludlow. We will be discussing something from nothing. So that will be on Tuesday, the 26th, which is next Tuesday. Make sure that you are here for that. The standard schedule for the rest of the week, except for tomorrow, there will not be a show here. Steve and I will be instead on the Drunken Peasants. We'll be making an appearance on there, so you can catch us there at 9:15 Eastern. And also, one last thing, following this show, there was a gentleman by the name I'll wait. I'll hold off and let you guys know about who is actually coming on after we end this show. But we're going to do a smaller stream after this. Godless Engineer is going to come on. There was somebody that said that by our flat Earth debates, because every Saturday we have a flat Earth kind of an open forum where we have people come in. They can try to make their case for the flat Earth. We have people on here that go back on that. We've been doing it for about 17 weeks now. This guy is a former flat earther. He is no longer a flat earther, and he thinks he's also a Christian. He thinks that the debates that we do with flat Earth are good. He said that the science is good. He agrees with all that. However, when we dive into things such as religion, as it were, and we do those kind of debates, that is not handled in such a good fashion, obviously because he is a Christian. And so he thinks that by proxy, that pushes people toward flat Earth. So in other words, all the debates and stuff that we're doing to disprove flat Earth, we're actually undoing by pushing them towards flat Earth. Does that make sense to you, Steve?
No.
Okay, well, we're going to discuss it anyway.
Who are we pushing toward flat Earth? I don't remember anybody going, hey, you know what? I watched this guy on Non Sequitur show, and yeah, it made a lot of sense. I'm going to be a flat earther now.
I think it's solely because of the fact that he is a Christian. I'll go ahead and tell you who it is. It's Clear Cognition. You've probably seen him around.
Yeah, I know who he is.
He's a former flat earther. But we'll find out more on that to come after this show. Yeah. It'll be at 9:30. So you can stick around for that if you'd like. Steve, do you have anything that you want to put out there before we dive in?
No, but I will tell people we had a really nice interview, Kyle and I, about I don't know, about half hour ago, 40 minutes ago. That was about a 90-minute interview. We put the link into the video description, or excuse me, the Twitter feed on the Non Sequitur show if you want to go check that out. I think it's going to be actually coming out as a radio program, if I'm not mistaken, Kyle.
Yes, it's a college in it's the University of Southern Queensland, I believe, in Australia. They have a campus radio station there, and it's going to go. If any of you guys are familiar with Destiny, Destiny uploaded a video, same interview on his channel, probably about 3 weeks ago. Same guy did. He was fantastic. So we really appreciate him reaching out, and that
Yeah, it was
was
a nice
really cool.
interview. I really
Mhm.
like those kind of interviews. Really
Yeah.
had a fun time.
Well, let's get to the man of the hour here. We have, like I said, once again, Isaac Arthur with us, who is a science communicator here on YouTube. Got a really big channel, excellent content, hours and hours and hours of content. He's best known for science and futurism with Isaac Arthur, where he discusses a broad variety of topics on futurism and space colonization. Once again, sir, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, again, thanks for having me on.
So for people who may not be familiar with your channel, can you take a second to kind of introduce yourself and tell people what you do and why you do it?
Oh, sure. Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur has been around for, I guess, we're on our 5th year now. I believe it's been 5 years. And our focus is usually on explaining science in the context of futuristic technology that might emerge, or some of the concepts we see in science fiction, as that gives people a good kind of basis for discussing these things. And we just kind of try to analyze these things and see how realistic they are and what might actually emerge in the future based on known science.
And what do you have? What do you have going on like here recently? What have you been discussing on your channel or kind of diving into?
Well, tomorrow's episode in the morning is going to be on cloud cities, and we'll be looking at how you could actually go ahead and make structures that would actually be floating up in the clouds or in low orbit or actually just suspended off the ground. Obviously, that's one of those examples of things you see a lot of in fiction, and we're going to see if we can actually find some ways to make that practical, economical even. So. And I think the week before that, I actually cannot remember what the episode are because I write them all a couple months in advance. So.
Hmm.
But we do one every week.
I've seen there's a Star Trek episode with that. The clouds, the cloud minders, right?
It
The
sounds
cloud
familiar,
minders
but I'm
living
not.
in the clouds. And matter of fact, my next door neighbor was actually in that episode. Her name was Charlene Polite. She was married to a guy named Raymond Burride, and that's the reason why I know that particular episode. It's a very good episode called "The Cloud Minders" of Star Trek.
I'm going to feel bad because I can't remember what that is. And I usually nail Star Trek episodes. Of course, the big example was always
There was
one
how many
from
episodes were there? Wasn't that many episodes of Star Trek in the original series?
Which series are we talking about? Because I don't know where
The
you're going
original.
to be up to it.
Like the Captain Kirk.
200. Oh, well, yeah.
Original
But,
series,
it's,
Cloudminders.
the whole franchise.
Are
We
you
got.
talking about the City Dwellers, Steve?
Yeah, the troglodytes. She was the leader of the troglodytes, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
I don't know why
It's
I'm
like a
not
foreign
looking
language
at
to
it.
me.
Yeah,
I have
actually,
not
Star
seen
Trek
one
is
episode of
cool.
Star Trek.
Yeah.
You've never what?
A little history there.
I've never seen one episode of Star Trek, not one.
He had a bad childhood. Okay, just don't ask.
Truly,
Yeah.
okay. This is probably this is going to get me a lot of hate, but it's okay because
As well, you should.
we're being open here. I have never seen Star Trek, and I didn't get Star Wars. Like I didn't get the
Oh, we can't
the.
be friends.
I mean, I really
understand.
didn't. I mean,
I don't even
I
know
just
you, man.
it was a cool movie. Don't get me wrong; it was a cool movie. But I like, Star Wars has such a like a draw and a fan base. Like people go like ape shit if they feel that something is not how it's supposed to be in the universe. Same way with Harry Potter. I don't get I don't get that either. Like it's not in me.
No, I mean,
I'll
you
admit
don't
I
have an
haven't
argument
got
if you
it.
talk about the first three Star Treks, like the in the series, right? So you had Star Wars: A New Hope, you had the Next Gen, Empire Strikes Back, then you had Return of the Jedi. But you had the three prior to that in the series, which were produced afterwards. If you talk about those three, yeah, I don't know what the hell was going on in the first three movies.
I
They were
didn't
just
care
bizarre.
I don't much care for the newer films either. I mean, I don't like to hate on them because I don't think they're nearly as bad. As much as I enjoy Red Little Media's dissections of them, I think they'll probably be a little unfair. But I have to admit the newer movies have not wowed me. Although in the older
I'm in the
ones,
same boat
I
with
mean,
you.
going back and watching them, they're not my favorite films, but they're very good films. So there was a lot of good sci-fi from the late '70s to the mid '80s. So.
Yeah,
And Star Wars was
I'll tell you what though, I was a I guess I'm more in the Halloween universe, like Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street. Like I can get into that, but just never could get into the Star Wars. I don't know why.
You know,
I tried. I
Mm,
really did. I
think
gave it.
I think Star Trek is better. I'm a much bigger fan of Star
Vampire
Trek
is
than I am Star
probably the
Wars.
only horror movie I really enjoyed in recent years. Although I guess I get like Cabin in the Woods, but I don't know if that actually counts a horror movie or deconstruct
Oh, that was
the
cute.
genre.
No, I like Cabin
That
in the
was
Woods. It
good.
was very
Yeah, that was good.
unexpected. I liked it. That
That
was
was
not
Josh
what I
Whedon.
was thought it was going to be.
Yeah, no, that was a good film. And
Yeah,
I
it
think it
was.
maybe broke the fourth wall in some ways a little bit more than it should have. But no film's perfect, but it was a good one. And I guess I count the film Sunshine too, although that's science fiction. But
Mm.
they did throw that horror film at the end of it, and I loved
Oh,
everything
oh,
but
come
that.
on. Oh, Isaac, I got to tell you, you had me at Sunshine. Well, you had me at the movie before the Cabin in the Woods, but
Mhm.
Sunshine, dude, that movie was great until the last. I
Exactly,
don't know, what,
30 minutes.
5 minutes,
It should have turned
half
into a
hour.
horror
Yeah,
film.
I would. Okay, last 20 minutes. That whoever changed the direction of that movie needs to be just never in films again. They
I mean,
ruined that movie.
I don't
It
want
went from going really
maybe the
good to
writers had
stupid
the
as to be.
beginning. I've always felt like somebody said, "This is a little too cerebral. Let's give them some open horror instead of something that's more existential in their heads." I think that film could have stood just fine without ever introducing a- basically a serial killer into the film. So
Yeah.
Mm.
And they're like riding on the edge of the sun, like anything's going to survive that with a serial killer that's a ghost.
It's kind of on this point, Isaac. What did you think of Interstellar? Everybody went crazy over that. What's your take?
I kind of when science fiction is being done with a lot of scientific realism, it's really important not to screw the pooch completely in the first few minutes of the film. This is an entire effort to save a planet by moving to new planets for a plot that now they want to terraform new planets basically and substitute life there. That is always going to be harder than say doming over your own planet where it's damaged at and decontaminating that and staying like that. Never makes sense in science fiction to leave Earth behind because it's damaged and settle in another place. It just doesn't make sense. It makes sense to settle other places, but it's always going to be easier to fix or terraform our planet than another one, especially since we all live here already. But it's just
Mhm.
a perfect planet for it. Even if you blew off the oceans, the atmosphere, and completely irradiated the surface, and it would still be easier to terraform Earth than Mars or Venus.
Oh, in that same fashion, then what was your view on the Martian with Matt Damon, where
Oh, I
he
love that film.
uh,
I actually held off watching for quite a while because it seemed like it was gonna be one of those pop films, but then I watched it and I thought, "Oh, this is." I usually wait till films are on DVD anyway because I don't like to go to theaters, but I love the film. Then I went and listened to the audiobook, and yeah, big Andy Weir fan now. So I liked Artemis quite a lot. Not as much as The Martian. His newer one, Artemis on the Moon, is quite a good book. I don't know if they've turned that into a movie, but the film for The Martian, the book for The Martian, wonderful.
excellent.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
I, okay, so, there's now I have like 9,000 questions running through my head, but there's so much with space, and because you're so like plugged into to space, I just have one more question that I think is when we talk about Oumuamua in just a second, we're going to be kind of going into different like theories as to what it could be. But when we talk about Mars, um, there's a lot of sort of attention gearing up towards like when will NASA put somebody on the Martian planet? Could there be life there within water that's on the poles, or what's your sort of view on our fascination with Mars? Like, why are we so we have to go to Mars and we have to colonize it? What's the drive there, you think?
It's probably the easiest of all of them to reach and set a base up on for a protracted period of time. Like if you go to Venus, which has some advantages over Mars, you have the problem that you're going to fall down through the atmosphere. Thing goes wrong with your buoyant balloons that you're floating on. Um, Mars, of course, has the canal thing going back to the turn of the last century. They'd seen what they thought were canals there, and there's always been that fascination with the possibility of life being there. And of course, we did the moon. It's been 50 years now. It's hard to believe it's been. I mean, it'll be what 6 more months before we do the anniversary, 7 more months, but 50 years since we went to the moon, and we haven't gone back since the mid-70s, and we haven't gone to the Mars yet. And there is a pressing desire to go back to the moon, but there's also that says, if we're gonna go back there, why don't we go to Mars instead? Because we haven't been there yet. And I think that's a lot of the attraction there. As for the life aspect, obviously, we're just interested in finding life somewhere else. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, with Mars, we're probably going to find life there if we do find life there, which we probably won't. But if we do, it's probably going to be the same basic stuff as on Earth. Um, Either because we might have cross pollinated, you do get asteroids moving back and forth, or because we settled the place on accident with our exploratory
Mhm.
rovers.
Yeah,
Many of them went
uh,
out.
I,
I'll stay on. So.
that presents a sort of an ethical situation. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, if there is life there, should we continue to sort of cultivate the planet, knowing that we could, in some way influence
I
that
think there
ecosystem?
has to be there has to be a real ecosystem for me to worry about it. A mutated strain of bacteria in a petri dish does not have any ethical value to me, but a more complex, something that actually is beyond simple cell organisms, I'd be very happy to try to preserve that, and I think we'd be a mistake to destroy that on ethical grounds. On scientific grounds, the value of life that either had a shared origin with us but is in a new environment, finding things in, say, Antarctica, for instance, that's very different life with great scientific value. How much more would it be on Mars, whether it was originated there originally, which would be phenomenal, or it was something that got transpollinated there, millions of years ago, or even if it was just bacteria that was on our rovers and had been mutating for decades in this alien environment, these all have huge scientific value. So we do want to tread carefully there. But
Hmm.
unless there's some massive underground ecosystem going on, which just can't be ruled out, I don't really see any ethical issue with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the chances of life occurring on Mars independently, pretty slim. I think if
Hmm.
we find life on Mars, we're
Yeah,
going to
no
find
idea.
there's going to be commonality with Earth through cross pollination. I don't think I don't think there's a really much of a chance for life to have originated um,
It's
endogenously
more that I'd be
to
worried
Mars.
about
Uh,
surviving there the entire
yeah.
time. There's a real possibility of us having pollinated at some point, or even vice versa, that life could have popped up on Mars first and we came from that. I don't think that's very likely, and I don't expect to find life originated on Mars. But if you had life that originated on Mars, I wouldn't rule that out, and I wouldn't even say it's improbable yet. We could find that this is one of those things that happens once per galaxy, even just basic abiogenesis, or we could find that there's like 8 or 9 places in the solar system where it developed completely independently, not
Hmm.
shared stuff, but independently. My first thought would be that if we found life on Mars, it probably had a shared origin with us, but we don't know what the odds on any of this stuff are. We are completely speculating when we talk about how probable things like abiogenesis are. There is no
Hmm.
data, there's no model. I've seen a few people say there's models. There are not. And there's a paper somebody wrote like 20 years ago that I think I won't name it, but I remember going through there. I was like, well, I don't really know my biochemistry too well, but I got an ocean estimate for volume that is literally 3 orders of magnitude too high for the planet. So I don't think this is really all that well modeled.
Yeah.
So, um,
They're looking at like Europa, and
Mhm.
there's another moon on at
Callisto problem.
yeah, that they think has a like a subterranean, like a sublayer of water underneath the the miles thick.
There's a few.
Uh,
Callisto, Triton probably has one. There's actually pretty good odds on almost any of them that are big enough to be spherically shaped from their own gravity and far enough out to be immune to, having a liquid surface. In almost all those cases, you'd expect there to be a lot more hydrogen lying around, and that would bond to oxygen, in which case you'd have a lot of water, in which case you'd probably end up with a subsurface ocean.
hmm. And how would life generate that way, with it be, if you have a layer of ice that's so thick, obviously there's, if any sunlight can get through there, like what's the sort of energy
Sunlight
that's.
Yeah, sunlight cannot realistically be a factor in life having started off in the first place. We know that photosynthesis came much later for us. Our primary target's not by any means conclusive or even, strong evidence is that it was undersea thermal vents. Any place that would have these, which would be almost any place that has seas, frozen over or not, and geothermal, from either tidal heating or radioactive cores, would have those exact same conditions or close enough to them. So if thermal vents are where life originated on Earth, then realistically, if that was not a fluke, if that was something that could happen, on something the size of Earth in, say, 1 million years would be an average coin flip, as it were, then you would expect that to happen almost everywhere. Because that should be a very normal thing. But again, we don't know, and we speculate. We know what the basic conditions are. You need a mixture of chemicals. It has to be a decently rich mixture. It can't be too thinned out, and you need an energy source. And the energy source that we probably had would have been tidal, either in tidal pools or in tectonic heating. And that should be really common.
That's fascinating. Theoretically, there could be mer people, like mermen and merwomen, possibly under the ice.
That's a little bit less likely, though. What are you saying, Steve?
I think one of the bigger problems with Mars, other than the fact there's a whole slew of thermal effects. I mean, the Mars temperature goes from anywhere in the summertime about 70 degrees Fahrenheit to minus like 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It gets really huge range of differential of temperature. But there's in the soil there's a huge amount of perchlorates, which are very, very oxidative. And so one of the problems that they're having right now is they don't know how they're going to build something on that type of soil. It'll pretty much destroy anything, whether it has chlorine, calcium chloride or chloric acid. These things are just nasty things. And so we're going to have to develop some kind of structure material that's not going to be susceptible to this stuff, or else we're going to be like exposed to Martian atmosphere pretty damn quickly. And that's so rarefied that you're not going to survive that, even at 70 degrees. And that's going to be the what's that?
Anytime you're looking to terraform another planet. Anytime you're looking to terraform another planet, you should treat it like you're trying to detoxify a chemical dump. It's never going to be easy. There are probably ways we could get way better at that, though they would probably make us way better at detoxifying, chemical dumps. The worst sewer, the worst radioactive, mess is basically any planet we come across is going to be harder to terraform than that. And that's one of the reasons why we tend to think that while we probably will terraform some planets, by and large, you're going to just say, well, I've got to build something that's completely artificial anyway. Why don't I just build me a big rotating habitat like an O'Neill cylinder where I have complete control of it from day one? Because on all these planets, you couldn't even use the natural soil. You'd have to layer it over with something and dig up some soil, and you would build that, strain it through, do huge efforts to make it usable, and dump that on top of your liner. It's like a trash dump, basically.
So. That makes sense. So, let's jump into what we're going to be talking about tonight. This fascinates, obviously, everything with space fascinates me. I'm such a nerd when it comes to things, just because there's so many questions that we don't know the answers to. You're constantly learning new things. There's everything changes just on a whim with a discovery, and that sort of thing happened recently when we found ʻOumuamua. Can you kind of, for people who may not be familiar, what is ʻOumuamua and how did we come about finding it?
Well, I guess the easiest way to phrase it is we have millions of asteroids and cometary bodies in this system, and honestly much more than that when we get into the size range that this is. So we don't see them very often unless they're very big or very close to us, and that's exactly what happened here. ʻOumuamua came in on I'll get to the hyperbolic part of that in a moment, but it came in on a trajectory that passed it very close to Earth and the Sun, and we spotted it. And it's around the size of a football field, which is pretty big, but really tiny compared to a lot of the stuff that we still can't see. So it was a bit of a lucky find. And when we were looking at this thing, we noticed that its speed was too fast to be in the solar system. Not a lot too fast, but what we call a hyperbolic trajectory. Most planets and things orbiting are on an elliptical path. They just rotate around the sun. If you see a speed that's too high for its location, though, then you know it's not actually in orbit around the sun, which means it had to have come from outside the solar system. Or, we'll add the caveat here, because it was one of the first things that came up, it could be a sped up chunk of something that survived a collision. So that was one of the first options that had to be looked at is, well, if this was an object that was on the faster end of what we'd expect, and it was perturbed when something slammed into it or broke it off of something else. And in fact, we can say that that's what would have happened anyway. It's just a question, did it happen in our solar system because it got ejected from its own? If it's not from our solar system, and we're pretty confident that it is not, then it was ejected from another solar system. And that generally happens when you have a collision or you have a gravitational attractor effect when something passes to you by and just kind of kicks it out of the solar system. And that sort of thing happens all the time. But this is our first time ever seeing one. And based on what we currently model, we should not actually have been very likely to see this one. But our estimate for how often these kind of bodies should come out and pass this close to us says it's kind of one of those 1 in a million type of events in a short period of time like we've been observing for. So either we got really lucky or our models are wrong, and this way again is the idea that it might not be natural. But that is the basis for what we have so far. It seems a little bit too bright, too reflective. It's on a hyperbolic trajectory, so it can't be from the solar system unless it was a broken up perturbed object. And it doesn't really appear to be outgassing like we expect something that close to the sun to do in terms of its motion. Because when you have a comet, those things give off a lot of steam, as it were, and that actually acts as a rocket flame. It changes its momentum. So that's kind of where the weirdness begins.
So real quick, guys, can we have you move the camera down so you're more in frame real quick?
Sure thing.
It's like we're kind of there we go. There we go.
So what worries me first about this entire thing is the fact that when you say that there are objects like this out there that probably are there but we can't see, how often are objects like Oumuamua circling around us, getting like within a pretty reasonable distance to our planet without us, kind of knowing about it? Is there any way to know?
You mean interstellar objects? That would be,
yeah, anything because we didn't see this Oumuamua until it was literally like right on us.
There are a lot of asteroids native to our solar system that will be winging by us at any given time on what we call a near-Earth or a near-miss. Some of them on relatively stable orbits where we intersect them decently often. In terms of that, it's just about size range. Frequency is inverse to size. So the smaller they are, the more common they are. As to interstellar objects, that's where the modeling issue comes into play because this is our first one we've ever seen. And the current models tend to suggest that it's a bit of a freak improbability that we would have seen one. They shouldn't be this common, right? A problem is when you have exactly one example, trying to estimate the odds of how common they all would be. Like if we had a second one come in right now and we saw it, we would know that model has to be wrong, or if it was on a relatively similar trajectory, that it wasn't in improbability because those two were related. Say they both came from the same event. But if you had two, another one comes in sometime soon from a very different angle, so it's not from the same source, then we would know these things were way more common than our current models suggest. But as to how common they are, even if we assume those models are correct, they leave a huge margin of error on them, orders of magnitude. And it's a real big guess right now, but Oumuamua would tend to indicate they are more common than we were thinking.
But is that a detection issue? Is that why? Are we getting? If we develop better techniques to detect these things,
yes,
do we expect to find more similar things, or is this the first one because now we're starting to reach the limits of hey, wait, we're able to detect things that maybe 30 years ago there's no possible way we would have detected this?
When we say how probable or likely these are all going, was talking specifically about our ability to detect them. If you have a flashlight that lets you see 10 feet around you and somebody walks by every minute, you have a much different range than somebody who has seen a lot more people walking by with an expanded light cone of like 100 meters or something. Right now, we don't have a very good detection. So when we're estimating the probabilities of us detecting these things, we're estimating how likely they should be and how likely they be in the value we'd expect to see for their size. We think that I don't want to give the impression that this thing passing through our solar system is at all unexpected. There's no debate that interstellar asteroids should be passing through the solar system quite regularly. There should pretty much always be some in for a given value where the solar system is. Us seeing it is the issue. And if this thing is quite small, we'd have problems seeing an event come quite close to us. So its question is this just a real lucky find? Or are our models just wrong about their probability? Or is this, something else? Is there an artificiality to this or a natural cause that's screwing up the probabilities of what we'd expect? And we don't have the data to say yet. That's part of why they want to do Project Lyra, to chase after a thing and then look at it real close. But of course, also what raises speculation that it could be unnatural.
And we're gonna get there in just a moment. But I want to ask a couple questions on the sort of the fact that we have these objects, whether it be asteroid, this something the size of ʻOumuamua, right? Let's say hypothetically it were to collide with Earth, right? And this is just going to go because I'm interested in how we can potentially prevent something like this. But let's say its path was coming into to Earth. First question is, what amount of damage would something the size of ʻOumuamua do if it impacted with the Earth? And is there something that we could do theoretically to prevent it from impacting if it did have a trajectory towards the planet?
Oh yeah, this thing is big, but it's not that big. It should be, especially because it's got a weird shape, it would probably burn up in the atmosphere a lot better than other ones would. But even an object that size, it would leave quite the crater, but it not we're not talking a dinosaur level event.
Gotcha.
This thing is between, we don't know the exact size or mass on it, but probably, I mean, we have asteroids that big hit us reasonably frequently, but thousands of years, every so often. You could look up the exact frequency on how often we get hit by something in its size category, but we need to know its size category a little bit more accurately to say how often those are. I'm sure somebody has actually estimated that, but in terms of protecting ourselves from something like that, it could do damage if it hit, but we're talking, people might die, not civilizations might collapse. And as to protecting yourself from something like that, this is one of those examples where so long as you see it coming, you can completely take it out. We could actually blow something like that up in low orbit if we hit it, and if we could actually aim and hit it, right? And it would still not be a threat to us because it would fragment into bits that would burn up quite easily. This is not a planet killer asteroid. It is something you want to have defenses against, though, because it can do a lot of damage where it hit. But it's also not one of those ones that's really hard to take out. We talk about asteroids that are immune to nukes, and this one you wouldn't even need nukes. You just use a conventional weapon. But we're talking about things that are, tens of kilometers across, at least. This thing is tens of meters across.
Gotcha. So when in the hypothesis about it coming from another galaxy, are there any guesses as to where it may have originated from?
I don't think anyone suggested it was from another galaxy, have they?
Maybe that was the wrong choice.
Yeah.
Where
I might have just said something. Well, you could theoretically have an asteroid cover a galactic distance.
I promise you, it's not you. It's not your understanding. It's my phrasing. Let me ask it a different way.
From another solar system, I think.
Yes. Do we have a guess as to where it came from? I'll ask it in simpler.
That's actually a little bit trickier because its speed kind of suggests it's moving with the kind of the local medium pretty well. And actually, I've heard some of the reasoning given for it being artificial is that the speed seems a bit off to match what we'd expect from any of our near neighbors that might have jettisoned it. I would tend to put a big on that. But it could be from pretty much any place. So it might be nice to kind of cut it apart and see what its composition is. But we would tend to expect something like that to have come from either our original local group, the stars that move with us, or the ones reasonably nearby that we've interacted with in the last, million years. We have a group of stars that we move with, some of whom have left that pack since it formed. And then we have other stars that we're moving through at all times. The local fluff versus the local bubble. And if memory serves, I don't think Alpha Centauri is in ours. But there are quite a few of these stars. The ones that are the same age as us are part of the same formative group. But we do pass through other alien systems on a regular basis, on astronomical timelines at least. And any ejected thing from those could easily wander into our path.
So let's get into the the anomalies with this. So sort of
Mhm.
the where it kind of goes away from what our models are and what it's supposed to be doing, because it's got quite a few aspects of it that are that we just can't figure out. Can you kind of go through what those are?
Well, the biggest puzzles on this thing, at least in my perspective, is why it's so reflective. It we hmm, Things this size, when we see them, they are a pixel to us. We don't really have much shape on them. We know this one is very elongated from the tumbling. Um, and it seems like it's giving off more light than it should for something that's not properly outgassing, and something the size we expect it to be. It's a little bit too shiny, potentially shiny at least. It's kind of like trying to identify something that from miles away, where somebody's kind of got a flashlight and is waving their hand over top of it. You're trying to figure out what that object is from that tiny changes in brightness that you're seeing on your wall, for instance, from the shadow effect. The other aspect that's anomalous about it, of course, is its speed. It does have a very strange speed. Not only is something that's interstellar, but it's a little bit different than we kind of expected for an asteroid, though not necessarily anomalously so. And I think the next one would probably just be that it feels like it's out of place for us to have seen it. It kind of comes down to, why is it scientifically anomalous, or why does it make people think it might be artificial? And the shape of it being elongated like that bothers people, and the brightness it's giving off in terms of its albedo or reflectivity would probably be the two big ones, besides the trajectory itself.
And your two examples right there are echoed by this is what I find the most interesting about this. So Harvard's top astronomer says that an alien ship may be among us, and he doesn't care what his colleagues think. And I just want to read a sort of what his overall argument is. He says that, let me find out here. I lost my place here. He says that since publishing his controversial paper, his name is Avi Loeb, has run a nearly nonstop media circuit, embracing the celebrity that comes from being perhaps the most academically distinguished ET enthusiast of his time. He said that this is potentially a technology from another solar system that just showed up at our door. And obviously this in turn has some of his peers non-pulse. But it is sort of astounding that one of Harvard's top astronomers is making the case that this is some sort of alien technology. Don't you think?
No. Every time one of these things pops up, we always instantly, the first thing goes through any astronomer's head, or the second thing maybe when they see something anomalous, is, could that be them? And it's just, it's one of the first things you have to think. I remember seeing that he once said that he didn't really watch science fiction growing up. I sometimes wonder if that's why he jumped to that conclusion a little faster than he should have, in terms of saying it out loud, at least. And because a lot of us, when we go through why this thing probably is not alien, we start thinking about motivations we see in science fiction for this stuff. I think criticism of him on this is, well, I had mine first. I don't think he should be expressing quite so firm an opinion on this, either for scientific reasons or just for what it could do. That's a very minor criticism in my book, though, because he has every right to express his opinion based on the evidence, and he is certainly qualified to be discussing the matter. But when people start to imply that he's gone off the rails, or that he's saying something that's shocking the scientific community, no, it's not shocking. Everybody immediately thought this could be alien. Then we went through the reasons why it probably is not. He apparently did not find them as convincing as most of the rest of us did. But I mean, I haven't ruled it out that it could be. I tended to go for it. I'm almost as sure as I can be that it's not alien as the evidence would let us say. I don't think it's artificial, but I can't rule it out. Right? He seems to be going the other direction, saying it's almost certainly artificial, though I don't think he's actually said that it definitely is. I don't think that's scandalous or indicates he's gone off the deep end by any means. So.
I agree, I think you summed it up perfectly. I don't think it's the fact that what he's necessarily saying, because I think that when you have something like this, we all, like you said, kind of go in that direction. To me, what I think stands out, or what's most shocking, is the fact that he actually came out publicly so strongly towards this this conclusion. You know, somebody
That
you would
was
think, yeah, you would think in that sort of that position, there's that kind of fear, or it would be for me, like, okay, if I come out and I say this, obviously everybody, all my colleagues are going to think that, like you said, I've gone crazy. You know, I'm sort of, but he seems, you know, he seems confident that this is a space technology. Where do you like? Why do you think that it probably isn't? Like, where's your disagreement with him on that?
all of the anomalies that we've seen on this, and this comes up with almost every time we find something anomalous in astronomy. So this is nothing new. We've been through this many times. Doesn't mean the next time isn't going to be the real deal, of course. Every time we find one of these anomalies, people will create a reason why that we could make it artificial, and then we'll see something else that's anomalous about it and say, well, this is a reason why this might be artificial. And the biggest problem that almost all these have is that frequently the motivations for doing something that way that would indicate that this aspect of it is artificial don't match up to the other ones. For instance, if it's a solar sail, and I remember people said, oh, it's like Project Starshot. You do not build laser sails to push space probes to slightly faster than the escape velocity of a solar system. This thing is moving fast, but it's not really moving that fast. To get out of the solar system, you need to be moving on an order of hundreds of kilometers a second, which is kind of what speed it's going, right? The speed of light is hundreds of thousands of kilometers a second. When you want to send something to another solar system, you're typically sending it hundreds of times faster than this if you want to see it arrive inside a century. And you can do that with a laser propulsion system. There's no advanced rocketry on making it go faster there because the rocket equation doesn't apply. It's just how long you keep it targeted. And once you actually have something like that in place, it's just as far as you can keep targeted on it. And it's just a probe, so you can push fast. So if this was a laser sail, specifically a laser sail like Project Starshot, it should not be moving at this speed. It should be moving way faster. If it was just a normal solar sail, though, one that runs passively, then the big question becomes, why did they build that at all when they should have thought of make a laser sail? It's the same technology,
Yeah.
this is what you're pushing out. And why is it so small? If you're going to build an object like this with a big sail for those distances, you have every reason to make that sail as big as you can get away with, even if you have to pull it in later on. In fact, you almost certainly would, unless you were using it to slow down with. And if it was slowing down using the sail, it should be slowing down a lot faster than this, since it should have been moving way faster when it came to the system. And it's kind of like a parachute, right? It works fastest when you're in dense air, not when you're on light air. Light pressure from the sun that's going to be slowing this down should be slowing it down even faster now. Whereas it was coming out at a fraction of light speed coming into the system and slowing down using our sun. That to explain why it would be this slow, it should have come to a dead halt by now if it was using that kind of a sail. So that it doesn't fit for a light sail unless something was broken with it. And that introduces another problem. Anytime you have to explain a spaceship around, a potential alien artifact around by what if it's broken, you kind of have to remember that what if it's broken doesn't sync up too well with it being a probe in the first place. It's anomalous because we think we see something artificial there. And now we explain that artificiality by saying it's not actually doing its job. And that could be true. It could have broken, but it's very slippery slope reasoning at that point in time. A little contrived. So I don't really see how it could be.
Yeah, I have this is what bothers me about the scientific community sometimes. I'm all pro methodological naturalism, right? I mean, so science cannot answer certain questions. And I'm cool with that. But when we see something like this where it has no signal, no transponder signal coming out of it, no saying, hey, we're from another planet, no energy levels, nothing to indicate that it's from an alien civilization. Sure. Is it from an outside source other than the solar system? Yeah, I think everybody kind of agrees with that. It's not traveling near the speed of light. It's not going, there's nothing really too hyperbolically abnormal except for the fact it's a hyperbolic path. I mean, so and of course it is seems to be accelerating a little bit and that could be because of photonic energy and light sailing. So why is it that in science they jump to this conclusion, aliens? Now the Harvard professor, he says, a possibility. Well, so what? I mean, that's not newsworthy to say possible, right? That's a headline grabbing type thing to me in science. Well, yeah, sure, it's possible, but that doesn't mean it's probable. And for a scientist of his caliber, because he's a legit scientist, to one, use
No, very
weasel
much
words
so.
like that, I find disingenuous. And two, there's nothing of any substance in the data that he's put out there of what would give somebody a better indication of a non-natural source. When I mean aliens in this case, which I would place aliens under, even if they're natural, it still would be, in my opinion, falling under methodological naturalism. You don't assume things like aliens unless you have reasons to assume things like aliens. It's not something that we've experienced before to make a abductive argument from. So would you agree that you think he's maybe politicizing a little bit, or just doing it for non-scientific reasons? Because as a scientist, I can't see why he would put this out there with such flimsy data.
I have very strong negative views on that particular thing, so I would not want to accuse him of that because it's kind of like the worst thing in my book. Now that said, obviously a lot of scientists like to get attention for their projects, regardless of whether it's a personal ego thing. That's how you get funding, you get interest, right? And I'm sure he would love to do something like Project Lyra. None of the comments I've seen from him seem to merit quite the level of objection people in many cases are raising. I would not have come off so positive, but I don't know how much he believes. I don't know how firmly he believes that this is artificial. Last I'd seen, he was just saying that it was a real possibility. And that can be a weasel world at times, but I don't have a crystal ball to read his mind. He is very rightly respected in the field. He's done some amazing work. That doesn't mean you couldn't say, Tipler would be a great example of that. And I'll probably actually get angry mail for comparing to Tipler now, but I've always felt Tipler got a bad rap too. There's a lot of folks in science who obviously rush out to try to get headlines for whatever motivation. Some of those are very legitimate motivations, and I can't really complain since I obviously popularize science. That's what I do. And that's a little bit too hard for me to say whether or not that's fail. I don't want to accuse him of anything like that. And I don't even like saying I don't want to accuse him because that sounds like an accusation. I do not think he has done anything wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He's done what I'd have done, and I'm surprised that he did it, but I don't think he's done anything wrong at all.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I know. I'm not trying to accuse him of misconduct, but it's just unusual for somebody to posit aliens when there's no reason.
Well, Jason Wright did that with
if there's a naturalistic explanation, shouldn't we be looking for that first?
Well, it depends on the circumstance. If a Volvo lands in your front lawn from the sky, you are legitimate to assume that there was an artificial cause for that because it stands out as blatantly artificial. But where you can't be sure if it's natural or artificial, you should be looking for the natural solutions first. But to be fair, he in his opinion has certainly done so, and he has certainly done a lot. He didn't just jump the gun per se. I mean, I think he jumped the gun a bit, but it's not like he did it the very next day. He spent quite a lot of time researching this topic. And I can't think of anyone who's be more familiar with the data coming up from this object to be looking at it. So we are talking about the person who is pretty much the most qualified to be discussing it, saying that it is like this. So I don't agree with his conclusion, but he certainly has the expertise to be legitimately making these kind of claims.
You don't question his motive. You don't agree with his conclusion, but you don't question his motives. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Is there any guesses as to what could possibly be the reason for the acceleration? Like, has anybody put forth any sort of ideas on that?
There are a lot of notions being kicked around, but I think the same thing. One thing when we have to say something's artificial is everybody races out, or phenomenological. We race out and say it could be this, it could be that. And it's like, well, it could be a many things. I don't know if it actually is or not. And we just said it wasn't that. I don't want to, someone says this was an alien, and someone says, well, it could have been ball lightning. Either one of your conclusions is not really backed up at this stage. I mean, more modeling observations. The weird thing about it is that its speed is changing, not in a huge way, but noticeable enough, right? That we can't say that it would fit what we're seeing. We're not seeing an outgassing effect. We could be missing that, right? It's hard to see this object. But the only thing that would normally change something's speed off its trajectory like that would be something pushing on it. And the only two explanations that would come to mind for that normally would be an outgassing effect from sun and warming up gases to cause a bit of a rocket plume like comets get, or that the thing is very light and it's just being pushed by radiative pressure, which is again where the sail concept comes from. It is way too soon to be assuming that it is definitely getting this motion change in a very significant fashion from radiation pressure, though, I'd say. But I don't know what it is yet. It is anomalous. I don't want to give the wrong opinion. This is a weird thing.
Sure. How far away is it from where we are now? Like, how
I'm actually not sure. It should still be. I mean, I can't remember if it's still in around the sun. I think it's already past the sun, but you'd have to check that one. I don't really memorize that.
Is it worth trying to catch up to it? I mean, for any kind of real probative value? I mean, to spend that much resources just to find out it's a chunk of rock?
I'd be biased answering that. I would love to do that project, but we can chase the thing. The sooner we launch, the sooner we get data back as well. But we have quite a large window to actually chase the thing down at this point, and I'm pretty sure it actually is looped around the sun and moving out now. But
yeah, I'd rather do like Project Breakthrough Starshot or something and go to like Alpha Centauri.
Seconds.
Well, Dave, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo too, by the way. While he's moving, there's a while we're oh, it's fine. While we're on this subject, tell us what Project Leary is and what we would do if we were able to catch up with it.
Well, the basic concept is straightforward enough. There's a paper by Marshall Eubanks and a few other folks. I can't remember who else on it, but Project Lyra, Lyra, if anyone want to look it up for the constellation. Basic notion is to get a really big rocket, rapidly retool it to put a space probe on it that would be decent for looking at asteroids, and shoot the thing up there and push it as fast as we can on an intercept trajectory. Nothing really too fantastic in terms of concept, but it would be very fast. We would be basically pushing the envelope on what we can do. And it would eventually catch up. And then we would get it as close as we could and take some shots, sort of like we did with New Horizons and Ultima Thule recently. In terms of actually getting data, we've really not we want something that could actually ideally touch the surface and actually take a close look, but any data would tell us something. Is it worth it? This is an anomaly, and we haven't found a new one of these in the last year that I'm aware of. So we can assume they probably don't happen too often. We've been able to see things like this for at least a decade now, even though we're getting better at seeing them. I don't know that we necessarily want to miss this chance because we don't know when the next one will be. This could be something that we'll only get a chance to do like one every 10,000 years in terms of this kind of range. If we can expand our telescope and detection range, we'll probably see more of these. They could be routine and mundane, but this is our only chance to do it.
I want it to turn around and come back towards us. That's what I'm looking forward to. If it's alien, that would be cool. If it just, oh, hey, wait, I changed my mind. I'm going to come back towards
this thing. Is not overtly artificial. And I guess just to answer the other question real quick, I would like to do it, but there may be better use of resources too. So I want it, but I wouldn't. It's my area. When something's really artificial, it should stick out like a sore thumb. So we're trying to decide how artificial is it. One of the notions is this thing wouldn't look that artificial because they're trying to make it blend in and camouflage it. I hear camouflage come up. If they want to camouflage it, they've done a horrible job. It's kind of like, having somebody get up in like body paint and camo gear and sneak down Main Avenue with a megaphone and a torch.
That's very good point.
Blatantly visible. So.
Is there a comparison though? Could you make this comparison and you tell me, like, if let's say because it's in a shape or the size and the proportions of it are such that it doesn't jump out at us as being anything that doesn't look like a rock, right? Let's say we have Voyager 1 and 2 that are continuing to fly out into space, and they fly by a planet that has no concept of that structure of a probe, and it flies by, and they're looking at it like, what is that? They don't have that concept of the shape. We're used to seeing what Voyager 1 looks like because it looks like a satellite probe. Could it be that sort of because it's not a shape that we see every day, therefore we're not thinking that it's a spaceship or some sort of vessel?
With things like probes like that, I mean, ignoring for the moment that to see something like Voyager with our level of technology, it would have to pretty much skim our atmosphere. And even that would be dicey. This object, a probe, something like that, this probe, how well can you see it? If we could get a good picture of it, we would know, hands down. Right now, we're basically talking about a pixel. And if I'm looking at Voyager as a pixel, it looks normal enough. Maybe it's anomalous speed. If I can actually get a close enough picture to see it like you and I are used to seeing in artist renderings, right, or photos, if they can't tell that that's artificial, then there's an issue there. Some things, it's one thing to think this sharp rock might be an axe, or maybe this axe head is actually natural. It's another thing to walk around somebody's tool shop in their house with hundreds of different tools lying around and say, these could be natural. These should look artificial to anybody who sees them. And
Very good point.
yeah, pattern recognition of that variety, we don't know that it necessarily evolved that way for everything. I'm sure there would be differences anyway, but you always have to ask what goes into making something an intelligent species in the first place. And of course, we don't have any idea, but we can make some good guesses. Right? The usual one is maybe the aliens aren't very curious, never seems to quite make sense, because how does somebody get to be an advanced technological civilization if they're not curious? Maybe some examples are, but it'll be a rarity. Or maybe they can't stand being near anybody else at all. They are super xenophobic. And say that would be a pretty strange trait to develop for something that had to do the specialized civilization like we did, with many different people, who you couldn't all know personally. So possible they could certainly be more xenophobic than us, but you would tend to assume that there had to be certain limits, certain constraints on that. Same reason we tend to think they'd probably be expansionists, because how else would you ever evolve a civilization if you didn't have that leaning?
Yeah. That's a good point. What's the time frame on them deciding if Project Lyra would be something that they would want to do? Because obviously, with each day that passes, it gets further, out there in space.
Chasing it down, because it's not like it's actually going to slow down as it tries to leave the solar system, of course, but then so will our probe. It's getting further ahead. So if you want to make a rendezvous, you need to be going faster and faster to catch up to it in a timeline that we'd actually be able to heal back from it in. We have a decent launch window. If I remember right, we actually had at least a year to put something like that together if we wanted to. And you could do it longer, you just have to go faster. And you start to lose track of where it actually is, because it's a very small object. You wouldn't be able to zoom in on it. But the longer you're looking at it, the more accurately you can estimate its trajectory. So, this is something that if we needed to, we could go chase it down anytime in the next 10,000 years. Oh, wow. But if we want to do it with our current technology and budgets and get information in a reasonable timeline, we'd want to be looking to launch, in 19 or 20, I would think. But so as you don't mind pouring on more juice, bigger rocket, smaller payload, you can chase after that thing. It's going to take it thousands of years before it leaves our solar system.
That's crazy to think. What is the you mentioned Project Starshot? That is the light sails that they want to send over to it's Andromeda, right?
Alpha Centauri.
Alpha Centauri, yes. What's the time?
What for Project Starshot?
Yeah, what's the time frame on that?
That's more of a developmental issue, because you actually have to build all that infrastructure up in space to do something like that. Now, I've heard people say we could do it from ground-based facilities, and that's certainly a possibility. I couldn't really say how well that will work, but usually when I think of using laser sails, I think of something in orbit that was generating, a grid of satellites that generated the power to actually target it. Because I don't like to introduce the atmosphere into things where I'm going to be trying to target it an AU or more away. The longer you can keep that beam on the sail, the faster it's going to go. And the bigger the sail is, the easier it is to target far away. And the faster you push on it, the faster you'll be able to get that speed up too. So you want to use big, strong lasers you can aim a long distance away and keep them focused on that target, and you want a nice big sail. Now, that said, and it is one thing in favor of ʻOumuamua is that when you're sending a big probe that way, at really fast speeds, you don't actually want it to be moving that fast when you get to the target system. You'd like it to slow down. So you could actually have a space probe that got here at a decent percentage of speed of light and then was just moving at a slightly hyperbolic trajectory because it was trying to survey the solar system. do a flyby at 10% of light speed, and you've got a day or so to walk in the inner solar system taking photos, and that's not a very good exposure time to be looking around. But how do you slow it down? And if you try to slow an object like that down by a solar sail that was moving that fast, you'd probably see it reflecting back towards the inner system quite a long way out. As we see an example of that in Moat in God's Eye by Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle, a very good book. And if you're trying to figure out why someone would do it this way, that's actually a great book to be looking at to get kind of an idea why someone might take this approach for a probe. But a flyby with a laser sail, that's not advanced technology per se. It's just trying to keep it on target and trying to actually build those lasers up there. You could get one deployed within a few years if we really wanted to, but we'd have to throw money at it.
And how long would it take to reach this destination and then transmit those images back to us here?
If memory serves, the specifics, there's no real attached speed. I think they usually will say 30% of light speed is what they'd like to do with that. You could do, in theory, 99% or 0.1, but percent. 30% though is what I seem to remember hearing them say for Project Starshot. So that would be, I guess, about 13, 14 years to get there, and then 4 and change back for the signal. So a generation, basically 2 decades. Not a bad time to wait. I mean, you think about how long we wait on Voyager. Yeah. But you might want to push it faster, but every time you push it just a little bit faster, it also becomes a lot more fragile because it can take so much more damage that way too.
Absolutely.
And you also, again, you have less time to take photos when it arrives.
Would they, I assume they would send several of these out just in case there would be like collisions with things, right?
The assumption was that, well, you can take 2 philosophies of this. You can make really small probes and just hold them out there, like random rocks, though, and hoping one of them is going to hit the target and survive the trip. But then I usually like the idea of doing multiple relatively large probes, but it's all dependent on what the economics are. If you got a system in place that can push one of these probes up to speed in a day, then you launch one every single day. At one target or another, just because the stuff's sitting there not doing anything in the meantime. It's just solar panels and a laser, or a maser maybe, and so that's kind of your launch window. And the faster you can push them, the better, and it's easier to make something light like that. So it depends on how big can you make the sensors that are going to fit in there. And I think you'd want your sensor package to be on the same order of magnitude as your sail. So how thin can you make your sails? Having a kilometer wide sail foot to hit, but you can only include 1 ton of probe is maybe not ideal. So there's a lot of engineering on that one, but there's really no limitation on it on a theoretical angle. If you want to send things up to 90% of light speed with lasers, as long as you can push them fast enough, which they're not human, so you can give them a lot of acceleration, then you should be able to keep a laser focused on them until they're up to that speed.
Excellent. So we're right at the hour mark, and I've got a couple of just random questions about space that I wanted to ask you, and then we'll read super chats from the people. But just to wrap up, sort of ʻOumuamua, your sort of thought process now currently is that this is just either there's too many questions to say for sure, or you're pretty sure it's a natural thing from another.
There's too many questions, but nothing that we've seen so far really gives me much encouragement to think it's artificial. It's anomalous, but none of those anomalies really seem to fit together to form a realistic artificial structure, unless it was broken. And in which case, how do you detect a broken airplane based on normal airplane flight? It's when you've never seen an airplane before. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would say it's probably natural, and I've not seen any reason why it wouldn't be, basically.
Damn it! I wanted it to be Alien so bad. Yeah. I wanted
it
aliens.
Could be. It's not just, like I said, I'm not seeing any particular reason.
Go to the Arizona desert or Utah, and then just like going to the open skies, and you got to do like some kind of dance or something. They come get you.
So recently, they released an image of it's a preliminary image of a black hole. What's your takeaway on what you saw?
What black hole?
They did
on a I'm looking at Anton Petrov. He does. You know who that is? He does.
Name's familiar.
He has a stream called "The Black Hole Image Was Just Released. It raises more questions than answers."
The one they've been processing for years? Because that wasn't supposed to have been processed like to the end of the year, and I've been trying to keep track of that. So if it got released, I haven't seen it yet. Do you have that photo?
Yeah, I sent you
It'd be the
real quick.
Yeah,
first
that was
I've,
supposed to be the
I mean,
first image of Event Horizon, and I
I
have
hope
not
that's
oh,
true because
is this the Sagittarius A black hole they were talking about recently in terms of the one at the center of the
Yeah,
galaxy?
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay,
Sagittarius
sorry.
A, but they've not. They're supposed to image. They've imaged the Event Horizon, but there's so much data that it's still being processed, and
Yeah,
I don't think
a
it's
lot of
been
noise in
released
that
yet.
area.
yeah.
What is the
I
image
mean, I don't know when it was
that
released
you
either,
sent
but
you?
I don't really keep track of the specifics on the astronomy. I always wait for the data to be processed and discussed. So,
Yeah, it looks
um,
so. I mean, what I'm looking at on his, it looks just kind of like an eye. I think from I watched a little bit of it before I came on here, and he was saying that scientists are puzzled because the sort of brightness is emanating straight forward from the center, and they didn't expect that. They expected there to be more of a void there than they're getting.
Do you have an image I can look at? I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Okay, so we'll just table that one for a second then, since
I'm afraid so. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm probably not going to give you much of a good answer on that one. People are always saying scientists are surprised, and that's very true. But that's pretty much a perennial state. That's why can I go into science? So, very few of these things are mystifying or groundbreaking. Scaring the hell out of people as well.
let me ask you something
I see
about
the image you're referring to, by the way, real
what's
quick. Are you referring to this, Kyle? I'm going to send it to you right now because this is not the actual image. That's just that's just a preliminary what they think theoretically it's going to look like. Is that what you're
uh,
looking at? Because we've all seen this image
uh,
before. This is a data image. What hypothetically it might look like.
it's redirecting me. It's pulling up. Yeah, that's the one that he's got on his thumbnail. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the actual image. That's just a simulation.
Oh, well, clickbait then.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I've been waiting for that. I've been asking Dr. Kroon about that forever. I'm like, dude, when is this coming out?
So let me ask you about. You said something earlier, and I put this down to ask you about the building the structures in the clouds. Just because I am extremely curious, how would that feasibly work?
I would say tomorrow morning one can tune in and find out. But we
Good
do have a
man.
lot of topics to cover on that.
Yeah, good
But
segue.
we do
Yeah,
find
good
a way
lead
to
into
do it.
this.
So.
Good man. So last question from me, and then we'll get to the live chat. Of all the things that you've talked about, because you've talked about so many different things, not only with space but technology. We had you on last time to talk about the uploading your mind potentially. What's been the your favorite, or the one that you get the most excited about the potential for actually becoming a reality?
You mean in terms of theoretical technologies on the table?
Yeah, anything that you sort of discussed on your channel.
Probably automation, just in general, automated production. Not necessarily AI, because I tend to think AI is a little bit dangerous, but I mean, human level AI. I'm quite looking forward to seeing how that comes along in terms of ways that we can make, appliances that were smarter, or ways we can make a car that could drive itself, ways we can make a factory that mostly operates itself. I like that because you can increase the standard of living for everybody. And that's always a big one for me with a lot of the space exploration stuff is I do find the astronomy fascinating, but I'm always more interested in what we can do with it. So you break that line on automation to the point where you can have something that actually builds itself or can build more of itself or requires very little human, control to basically reproduce things. That becomes the biggest paradigm shift in our approach to these things since at least the Industrial Revolution and probably since like fire. So it's a big one.
Do you are you familiar with Andrew Yang, who is he's coming out now big about the AI and how it's sort of the dangers of what it's going to do to people's like he's saying that it's going to be a huge it's going to like displace so many people because like his example is the truck driving. Like his big thing is the trucking industry is going to be hit extremely hard when we get to that point because trucks will be able to drive themselves. It'll be safer. You know,
Oh, Mike, 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 cut up. Yeah, well, he's fixing that. We still got you.
But I
Isaac,
mean,
right?
in terms of technology causing disruption to people economically, absolutely it does. We have an episode next month on techno primitivism where, well, we kind of do beat up on the concept a lot. We remind people that a lot of folks like the Luddites, for instance, have a reputation as violent and anti-technophobic, when in reality they were not really very violent or technophobic. They had a very legitimate complaint. I don't agree with them, of course, but there have been a lot of times throughout history, this is not new, where some new piece of technology has put many people through a great deal of hardship. Usually, everybody else benefits more. So long as society is going to kind of clean up after itself in terms of taking care of the folks who did get displaced, usually we don't have to worry too much about the impact. But that could change in the future if that starts being something where it just displaces vast swaths of the population to the point where they have nothing else to do at all.
Yeah, I read.
So we never want to just say technology's always benefited.
Oh yeah, I read something recently that they said one of the greatest existential threats to mankind will be coming from internal sources such as AI. Now, I know Hawking for a long time. He warned people of that too. Even if you go back to Isaac Asimov reading I, Robot, which, by the way, beautiful book series. If you haven't ever read I, Robot, movie's good, books way better. But yeah, so I mean, I think there's something to be said for that in some ways. I think there's a long way to go, but this kind of ties into your, mapping the brain to a different substrate, which we've talked to you before about. But do you think that artificial intelligence in some way is going to be the doom of us all, or is that something that we even should consider? Because that right now is like the number one thing on the board of what they think is going to end the civilization, and they're not talking very far down the line. We're talking a couple hundred years.
Oh yeah, almost all of the threats people bring up as a way that might end civilization do not work out well. An asteroid is very statistically unlikely to strike us with a doomsday level of effect in the time we have to worry about that, which is maybe another century. Gamma ray bursts and supernovas can almost be written off as any realistic probability of them happening. Nuclear war can't kill everybody off. However, there is one thing that's really good at killing intelligence, and it's important to remember. Intelligence is the byproduct of 4 billion years of getting good at surviving. We're good at it. The only thing that can usually kill off intelligence for keeps is other intelligence. And that is the problem with artificial intelligence. That said, people need to be careful not to confuse the two things too much. An artificial intelligence that puts everybody out of work is an existential threat to us. But not the same kind as the artificial intelligence that turns us into pets or does a Skynet or Matrix on us. These are completely different kinds of problems. They just happen to be correlated because they both involve making intelligence on your own. You don't have to worry about the factory killing you, but you do have to worry about putting you out of a job and effectively destroying your life. That's a real problem. It's not the same one, though. A society could collapse because everybody turns into hedonists and just doesn't want to do anything, for instance.
Yes.
Or it could collapse because you make an AI that kills everybody.
Yeah.
I think that, though. I thought you were going to say the biggest killer of intelligence was listening to a Trump press conference. That's where I thought you were going to go with that.
That's going to be the doom of us all.
Yeah, absolutely.
No comment.
Yeah. Okay. So here, let me start with Noble Athenian says Kyle's razor is going to apply tonight, and then says there's a Sphinx on Mars. Wonder how old it is. Any comment on the Sphinx on Mars?
There's no Sphinx on Mars.
I think that's a dig at that's a dig at me. Sigfrido Sarabia says if life origin is due to chemical reactions in the ocean, what does that do to the theory life comes from a comet impact or extra or from panspermia?
Interesting thing about panspermia is that there's a couple of ways you could actually have that and an origin of life in the ocean, because we have something called soft panspermia, and we talked about that actually about 3 weeks ago. The soft panspermia is where the life didn't come from space, but all the core materials did, which might be organic materials or even just talking about supernovas seeding systems with the right elements. One of the objections people always had to panspermia is it's kind of like you're just kicking the ball back further. You're moving the goalpost. It didn't originate on Earth, so where did it originate at? And that's a legitimate reason to dislike it, but at the same time, we already did that. I mean, saying, oh, I don't think it could come off from off Earth, you're just moving the goalpost. We did that when we said it would move down to deep, deep under the sea, too. And science doesn't actually care if you move the goalpost; it just cares about the right answer anyway. So we do not know where life came from on this planet. We have no clue. We just look for places that could cause the right chemistry and give you an energy flux, or could deliver it. And of course, we probably had lost all of our oceans not long after the moon formed by the process that made the moon, assuming that theory is right. So all that new water, a lot of it would have come from comets, and they could easily have had bacteria survive that because it wouldn't have been all that much blown up early on when the atmosphere was thinner. We don't know where that life came from. So it has to be something with energy, and it has to be something with chemical soup. And we just tend to assume that statistically it would be more likely there was probably thermal events, but there's no evidence for that. None. There's no evidence it was in tidal pools. There's no evidence it came from comets. So
excellent. And then 0132 says, if ʻOumuamua were a solar cell, would we expect it to even work if it was tumbling?
no. Well, okay.
Right.
If it had something that was actually holding it rigid, then presumably it would. You could have something that was just still tumbling like that. The problem is that, depending on how you built that light sail, and you want to build that thing really sturdy if it's supposed to be covering interstellar distances and getting hit by debris, it should not have deployed until it got close to us. You don't leave a light sail open the whole way. You tuck it in while you were traveling, and you would deploy it when it was getting the most light, which would also make it the most visible. And it would be possible that it broke down on deployment, maybe, but when we're thinking about that light sail, it should not have been expanding the entire time. So anything that worn out or given it a tumble should have just happened when it deployed the sail. Shouldn't have deployed it until it got closer. And that's that kind of the issue there. When this could be what it is, but if I were doing this thing that I'm saying it is, how would I have done it? And I would not have left a sail open for 10 trillion miles of travel.
Yeah,
it's just
that makes sense.
Damn.
All right, there's one more question, and then two more comments. I'll read the comments first, and then get to the question, because the question is actually an interesting one. Iso says, "Comfy bucks for a comfy stream with my favorite creators. Thank you very much." And Mark Baser says, "I for one welcome our potential new overlords." And then DePooch asks, "What's up with Apophis?" Which is a asteroid.
Stargate villain.
Well, it's it all comes full circle. It's supposed to hit, or the Russians came out recently and said that it's a meteor that's supposed to collide with Earth in 2068 or 9, I think.
It was 2029.
There's a lot of
2029, and then it got back to 2036 and 28. I don't know.
There's a reason for that, though, Steve. You know what it is? Because
aliens.
Well, no, it's an interesting thing. The Russians, the theory is the Russians came out with this date, and that it was going to collide with Earth because there was some people that did some investigation on the grant that the Russians got for this study, and they didn't actually get the grant to study that meteor. What happened, they think, is that this is a way for the Russians to get funding to test nuclear weapons in space. That this is sort of a way for them to be able to get up there and start testing the nuke program up in space. I mean, who knows? But
we're doing Star Force. Trump has the
Space Force,
military. That, whatever.
Well, it is past time for things like developed. And I know it's going to sound a bit strange, but we've put off testing nuclear objects in space way too long. We should have been setting bombs off there decades ago already. But I understand the attention of the Cold War, people don't really want missiles up there. Nuclear power for space propulsion would be invaluable and would save us tons and tons of money and let us move much larger objects around. And of course, people are understandably afraid of nuclear bombs. But if that is the case, which I have no reason to think it is, I mean, potentially a conspiracy theory, it's true, then I'd say all the better. We're probably way past time we start detonating bombs in space again.
Well, I'll say this. I have no problem with nuclear in space. That's not a concern I have. The concern I have is the way up. That's the most
yeah,
once it's up there, I don't
get up there.
Getting it up there, that's dangerous because you are dealing with radioactivity.
That was
something like that is making sure everybody can actually see what you're doing with it, so that there's a feeling that nobody minds you using nukes in space. They just don't want you to shoot them down at us. And so as long as it's all being done transparently, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I would also say that, like Steve said, it's the people getting those nuclear. It's not the nuclear weapons in space. It's the people who are putting those things up there. You never know. But this was
They have found
as
and had 8,050 years too. So
oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. This was as fascinating as I knew it would be. It's always a pleasure to have you here. And we thank you for taking the time to come by here and take a second, please, and let people know where they can find more of you, follow you, or anything that you've got going on, especially the video tomorrow, because I can't wait to find out how we're going to build cities in the clouds.
that should be one of our funner ones. And then the little spoil I'll give is we do come up with some ways we could potentially viably do it. And that will be our episode tomorrow morning, Thursday morning. And we have a new episode every Thursday morning. And we haven't missed one in 4 years now. So, you can see what the upcoming schedule is, and you can look back over the catalog of around 200 episodes we've done. And you can find that at Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur.
Excellent. Well, once again, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you guys for watching. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back here with Clear Cognition and Godless Engineer, and we'll find out how we may be pushing people towards the flat Earth. That breaks my heart to hear, but we'll nonetheless hear him out, and we will see you guys in just a few. Thank you once again, Isaac Arthur, and to everybody else. See you in a few. Our pleasure.
I'm playing with my hair for Christy. Here, this is for you, Christy.
Wow. You had to end it awkward, didn't you, Steve?